Karma here with your Mars in Virgo cheat codes. If you are here, you understand that we are astrologically influenced by the tug and push of the planets and stars. With the understanding of how this influences us in life, we can better navigate life's obstacles. So welcome to the club, and let's jump into the energy around Mars in Virgo. So on June 17th, Mars will enter Virgo and it will exit Virgo on August 8th. The signs that are most impacted are Virgo, Cancer, and Gemini. So the Virgo energy and the Mars energy are kind of different, right? Mars is really around your actions, the desire you have, your passion, the things you move forward in and initiate, right? It's also captive of your aggression, your courage, your confidence, the strength that you have. Whereas Virgo energy is more of like a systematic, analytical energy. It's really about the mentality you have around the systems you put in place in like your everyday routines, right? This is kind of like your routine nature. Also, this Virgo energy goes into the realm of like pessimism and perfectionism. So Mars, the actions that you take in this moment for everyone, right, with Mars and Virgo, there's an emphasis here on your actions being in the realm of analysis, right? Now, this energy also is kind of like opposing. Mars is kind of impulsive. Okay, it rules over Aries. It has an impulsive nature about it and maybe like a short stay type of nature, like quick to action type of nature, whereas Virgo is very like diligent. There's an emphasis here on like your actions and almost like a tug of war around you sticking to something and creating a system around it. Or if it's not perfect, the war between like you moving on or you working, pushing forward and continuing to find ways that will improve the systems that you are putting or have in place. Mars really gives you the push and motivation to kind of move forward towards efficiency. So that's what Mars is working on in Virgo in this particular moment. So on the higher vibe of this energy, you can find systematicness, like efficiency, very goal oriented. And then like on the lower vibration of this can come with perfectionism, criticality, and pessimism. So really, let's talk about the aspects that actually happen. All right, Mars is sextile to Jupiter. Jupiter will be in Cancer. So that is going to be related to opportunities, discoveries, your habits, your methods, and your systems. You have Sun sextile to Mars, and the Sun will be in Cancer. So your focus again will be around your methods, your home, and like your internal security. Then we have Venus square Mars. This is going to be an energy around like perfectionism and actions around like your mental persuasion. Okay, so we're going to go into, I'm not going to go too deeply into the overall thing because we'll talk about it sign by sign. However, let's talk about how to look at this. This will be for the rising signs. This will be most accurate for rising signs. Okay, if you want to look at this from your sun sign or your moon sign, you can, right? For your sun sign, you will need to look at this from the perspective of your focus, the perspective of your ego and pride, the perspective of your attitude. If you're looking at this from the perspective of your moon, this is going to be related to your emotions, your instincts, your intuition, and your habits. Okay, so if you want to look at it from a different point of view, just make sure that you understand the difference in the lens that you're looking at it in, okay? But again, with the signs, it is going to be most accurate for the rising sign. All right, now let's jump right into it. Hey, Taurus. All right, so Mars in Virgo is going to be entering into your 5th house, okay? Your 5th house of Virgo. So really what this is going to be exploring is your actions within your creative realm, okay? So these are the actions that you take the passion and the drive that you have within your house of self-expression. This is the house that contains casual dating. This is the house that contains, casual sex. This is children, entrepreneurship. Okay. And with that house, with Mars in that house, Mars enters Virgo on the 17th, right? It is creating a square, or it has already created a square. It's separating at this point to the first house, right? And your first house is your house of Taurus. That's also your house of self, right? Your first house is in the realm of Taurus, right? So this is the patience that you have for yourself. This is the patience that you have and the resourcefulness, the practicality that you have around your ego, yourself, and also your routines. So with this square energy, Mars has just exited your fourth house, your house of home, right? And it's just barely getting into Virgo energy. So the earth signs typically mesh, but this is the later part of Taurus where Uranus is sitting, and the very early part of Virgo. So there's an emphasis here. It's a separating square. So like there's the release of some sort of tension. And again, this is where you begin, because now both planets are in Earth. This is where you begin to kind of start to feel the relief of that energy. So essentially what this is saying is Mars is moving away from that square to Uranus. There was some sort of sudden change that happened in your fourth house of home. And there is an emphasis here of you now getting into this Virgo energy, establishing some sort of creative action or endeavor that helps you to move forward within this trigger from home. Now, that trigger would have probably been something related to like self, something to your identity, a trigger from like your past or your upbringing, something that triggered like your identity. So now with Mars in your fifth house, there's an emphasis here on you exploring new creative endeavors to help you move past whatever this trigger was that you just had. On June 22nd, Mars is sextile to Jupiter. So I've talked about this in the Jupiter video, but essentially for you, Taurus, Mars in your fifth house of creativity, so your systematic nature around creating and self-expression, is now sextile to your mental process. So there is something here in relation to like a change in your mind. Again, you just had that trigger that happened when Mars was in Leo and Uranus in the last degrees of Leo, and Uranus already being in the last degrees of Taurus. There was something there that was pointed out. And now Mars is going into Virgo on the 17th. And now you're concentrating on your systematic nature within creating solutions for yourself and not leaning into pessimism or criticism. And now this speaks to opportunities that arise that kind of can help change your perceptiveness, right? Your perspective within your mind. This is something that happens on June 22nd. Okay, so there's a sextile between the fifth house and the third house, and this is to Jupiter, and Jupiter has just entered Cancer itself. So this is Cancer Virgo energy. This is opportunities. Earth and water nourish one another. So this can be positive for you if you allow it to be. On the 26th, the sun is sextile to Mars. All right. So the sun, which will have just passed its conjunction with Jupiter, right, will be sextile to Mars. Now, in this particular moment, with the sun sitting so near Jupiter, right, the sun is combusting Jupiter. It will have done that on the 24th. However, your intuitions, you may have some sort of emotional trigger in this moment. And this goes back to that sextile energy between your fifth and your third house. There is something here that Jupiter and the sun conjunction, that conjunction there that happens on the 24th, there's something here that you can act on, create solutions, right, in your fifth house as it relates to like a change in mentality. Again, this is still very much so around your change in mentality, your perceptiveness, your perspective in total, right? This can be around your communication. This could be a new conversation. This could be, the promise that you will converse about things if you feel triggered. This could be anything. But this speaks to your actions around self-expression and your thought process around that. And then on July 23rd, Venus will be square Mars. Okay, so Venus is the planet of beauty, love, and harmony. That is where sex lies. That's where your relationship lies, art, beauty, creativity. So now there's a square between your fifth house of Virgo and then your second house of Gemini. So your second house, right? Your second house represents your value, your material value, your finances, your self-worth, lending and borrowing, and the Gemini energy, because your second house is in the realm of Gemini. This is your curious, imaginative nature around those resources. Now, this is a square energy, so this is a little bit more difficult to navigate, okay, for Taurus, because it's oil and water. It is air and it's earth. So in this moment, you want to concentrate on your diligence, right? Your actions, and not allow for your mind to kind of take over and take you to the left. There's an emphasis here on like you pushing forward within your action, or allowing your actions and the result of that to show you kind of where you are going in this moment. That's July 23rd. Overall, Taurus, this energy relates to creating solutions around some sort of ego trigger that you may have had with Uranus in your first house, and also the change of mind or the change of logic that you have around that, and you creating or maybe expressing yourself in a different way, or continuing to express yourself and find the best way possible for you to express yourself over the next month and 2 weeks. Okay, so just kind of work on that and you should be good to go. All right, Taurus, I hope this message reaches you well. Virgo, so Mars in Virgo is in your first house because you're Virgo rising. All right, so Mars enters Virgo on June 17th, and that will be in your first house of self. Okay, so this is your attitude, this is your pride, this is your ego, this is your soul's purpose, this is your focus, this is your identity. So as Mars enters Virgo, there would have been something that happened in your 12th house of Leo, right? Because now Mars is in a separating square to Uranus in your 9th house of Taurus. So there's an emphasis here on something that would have triggered your fears, your desires, your fantasies, the past. Okay, it could be sickness or health for you. And as Mars makes its way into your first house of Virgo, your concentration needs to be on your habits around your focus, your habits and actions around your attitude, your identity, your ego, or your pride, right? You need to concentrate on yourself and how it is you are behaving based on your ego triggers, okay? Now, this is in a separating square to your 9th house, and your 9th house is representative of exploration and discovery. This is higher learning, this is spirituality, this is religion, this is ethics, right? This is a second life partner, this is long distance travel, okay? And this is your house of Taurus. So this is like a resourceful behavior that you have in this 9th house, that in life, that's what you're attaining to have, right? A resourceful and practical stance or viewpoint and behaviors within this house, right? So as Mars enters into Virgo, you are in a separating square to that 9th house, and now you can adjust, right? This is an adjustment period, as you know, you've already passed that trigger of the 12th to the 9th house square, right? And now you can adjust to whatever this is that you need to adjust to. Okay, on June 22nd, June 24th, June 26th, right, there is energy around your first and your 11th house. So the 11th house is where Jupiter and the sun are going to be sitting at this point. The sun will be in Cancer, the Jupiter will be in the first degrees of Cancer as well. So I talk about this in my Jupiter and Cancer video in a little more detail. But essentially what's happening is the sun is passing by Jupiter and causing a combustion, which basically means there is an emphasis on like emotional triggers. There's an emphasis on maybe like a lack of intuition in this moment because the sun is passing by Jupiter and it's going to outshine Jupiter basically. So on the 22nd, Mars will be sextile to Jupiter, and that is expansion and discovery, right? And that's going to be in your 11th house of your community, with your friends, your alliances, acquaintances. This is your social clubs. This is your earned wealth. Okay, this is your humanity. All right, this is your employer finances as well, and this is your house of Cancer. Okay, so this is your perceptiveness and your sensitivity to this energy. These are moments of sextiles. Okay, so these are opportunities that show up. So you see opportunities for you to, you know, take hold and grab of. Now, in this moment, it might be a little bit of emotional turmoil because of what's happening in the realm of Cancer in those first degrees, right? As Mars is entering its first degrees of Virgo, right? But these are opportunities for you to kind of grab and move forward towards your highest and greatest good. But in this moment, it may not, you know, it might not look like what it actually is, because again, our intuition will be a little off, and we might be, you know, susceptible to emotional triggers. Okay, on the 24th, right, that's when the sun actually comes into a conjunction with Jupiter in the 11th house. Okay, so that's when the combustion happens, and then the sun will move past Jupiter, and then on the 26th, Mars will be sextile to the sun, right? So this speaks to exposure of something. So again, on the 22nd, you're going to be like, what in the world is this? What the heck is this? Okay. And then the 24th, you're going to be triggered. And then on the 26th, after, you know, after the sun passes Jupiter and your intuition kind of starts to turn back on, and, you know, that Jupiter and Cancer exaltation turns back on, that energy, you're like, oh, wait a minute, this actually might be a positive opportunity. Or you might not, you know, we all have choices, right? We all have choices, right? But it's something that, again, this is diligent behavior around your ego, Virgo. So hopefully, you know, you are not so triggered to where you're just kind of like, man, F this. I'm walking away from this period, because it kind of gets better after the sun passes by Jupiter in Cancer. Okay, so then that will take us all the way to July 23rd. After the 26th, there are no more aspects to Mars in Virgo. Okay, so you have like almost a month to kind of work on your behaviors around yourself, right? Around your ego, around your pride. And then we get to July 23rd of 2025, and Mars creates a square to Venus in the 10th house. All right, so Venus represents your love, beauty, creativity, abundance, relationships. And again, with Mars in your first house, now this is, you know, now this has passed through, almost passed all the way through Virgo, and is at the end of Virgo. There is this square that happens to your 10th house, right? And what this is this is to better refine your behaviors, especially as it relates to your 10th house, which is your house of ambitions and your goals, right? So the habits that you have worked on, the actions that you have worked on as Mars moves through Virgo, right? Your diligent behaviors, your persistence, right? Your systematic behaviors, your behaviors that kind of revolve around analysis and not impulsivity. There is an emphasis here of something popping up in career or business goals, ambitions. Okay, the power you have, the influence you have, your reputation, that is going to require you to make some sort of adjustment, because this is in the realm of Gemini for you, Virgo and Gemini. That energy is not the best meshing energy, right? So this is like your flexibility. Virgo is very, I'm gonna do the same thing over and over and over and over again, and Gemini is I want to, explore, I'm flexible, I'm curious, I want to know more, I want to try different things, right? So these two different attitudes in these two aspects of your life, you're going to have to figure out how to mesh your new way of behaving with what is happening in your 10th house, okay? So again, that talks about, being flexible. That doesn't necessarily mean you scratch or you completely do away with whatever new habit that you have been working on, as Mars is in Virgo. That just means you shift and you pivot. This is like, okay, you've learned to have this type of behavior because Mars just came out of fire, right? Leo, right? And that's very impulsive. And now it's in an energy where it's requiring us to be diligent and systematic. And as it gets through Virgo, now we are about to enter into Libra, which is air. So Gemini requires us to kind of be flexible now. We have concentrated on consistency, and now Mars is making its way through Virgo and it's about to enter into air. And now here's the first lesson around being flexible. Right? Being flexible with that air energy. Okay? So overall, Virgo, this is, an adjustment to your attitude, an adjustment to your ego or your pride, your focus or your purpose here on the earth. And in this moment, the practice here is diligence within your first house, within yourself, right? And your behaviors around how it is you act, within your pride or your ego within yourself. All right. And again, you'll see themes around your goals as Mars makes its way through Virgo and gets to the end. And you'll also see themes around like your community and your friends group, as well as exploration and discovery. And again, this talks about consistency, systematic behaviors, and analysis. Okay. I hope this reaches you well, Virgo. Capricorn, Mars is going to be entering into your 9th house of exploration and discovery. This house represents higher learning, second life partner, spirituality, religion, law, your ethics, discovery, second life partner. Okay. And this is really going to highly concentrate on your behaviors and your consistent behaviors within this house. As Mars enters Virgo, there would have been something that popped up in your life within your 8th house, transformations and transitions, and that is your house of Leo. So Uranus is sitting in your 5th house, and Mars would have passed by the last degrees of Leo, where Uranus is sitting in your 5th house of Taurus, right? And it's sitting in the last degree. So Mars would have created a square to Uranus in the final degrees of Leo. So as Mars passes into Virgo, there's emphasis here on concentrating on your consistent behaviors around discovery and exploration. All right. So this square to the 5th house, this is your house of creativity and self-expression. This is where dating lies. This is where drama lies. Casual sex, casual dates, your children. This is entertainment and fun and games. And this is like your resourceful behavior within this realm of life. Okay. So now that Mars is entering into the realm of Virgo, which is earth energy, right? It is a compatible energy to Taurus. This is where you get to kind of feel the relief of this square energy and really concentrate on being consistent and diligent within your actions. On the 22nd, the 24th, and the 26th, there's energy here around your 7th house. So for you, this very well could be around, with this 5th, this 9th, and the 7th house. This could be around a relationship because your 7th house represents your long-term partnerships and your bonds. And that's your perceptiveness and your sensitivity to that area of life, okay? So within the 7th house, there are going to be some sextiles created around the last parts of June. Okay, you have a sextile to Jupiter in the 7th house, and then you will have a sextile to the sun in the 7th house. However, what is happening, right, on the 22nd, that sextile to Jupiter from Mars, right, there's an emphasis here on, it might not really be feeling like too much to you, right, because I talk about this with Jupiter in Cancer. So there's an emphasis here here of the sun coming into contact with Jupiter, right? So that's called a combustion, and I explain it a little bit more deeply in that video. However, the exaltation of Jupiter in Cancer, where you have those great feelings of intuition and, emotional depths, there's an emphasis here as the sun is approaching Jupiter, right? You kind of feel a dampening of that energy. So on June 22nd, the sun will be approaching Jupiter. Okay. And so you might feel a bit more emotional. You might feel a little bit sensitive, right? You might feel a bit moody, right? So there's something here that happens on the 22nd, right? That pops up in your life as an opportunity, but you may not necessarily see it that way in that moment because of what's happening between Jupiter and the sun in your 7th house. So now you go to the 24th, and that is when the exact conjunction happens between the sun and Jupiter. And then the sun will continue to make its way past Jupiter, and then it will create a sextile to Mars in the 9th house. So again, this is still from the 7th to the 9th house. So you'll see, exploration and discovery. Jupiter rules over the 9th house because Jupiter rules over Sagittarius, which rules over the 9th house. And there's an emphasis here, right, on exploration and discovery and you discovering something. However, again, on the 22nd, it may not necessarily feel like that, but once you get to the 26th, when the sun is sextile to Mars in your 9th house, this talks about exposure, opportunities to expose something to you, make it very clear, right? So again, this could be a relationship for you. This could be a second life partner, somebody you dating, going from, a situationship to a relationship, right? Or somebody that you're dating, you decide that you want to marry them, or y'all want to have kids, or, whatever this energy is. But again, this is representative of your consistent and diligent nature, okay? Within the 9th house of discovery and exploration. Okay, and that also includes a second life partner. So after that, Mars will make its way through Virgo, okay, and it won't have any other aspects until it gets to the later part of July 23rd, 2025. When it gets to the later part of Virgo, the next sign Mars crosses into is Libra, right? So with this 6th house, there is a square between your 9th and your 6th house. Your 6th house represents your daily life, your duty, your work, your routines, your pets, your independence, right? This is also the house of your health and sickness as well. Okay, so this is in the realm of Gemini for you. So this speaks to the flexibility that you have with adjusting your thought process within this house, right? So there is square energy here because as Mars has been working its way through Virgo, right? You have been hammering, hopefully you have been practicing diligence and systematic actions within your 9th house, right? You're discovering, you're exploring, and you are being consistent about it, right? And now we get to the later part of Virgo, and Mars is soon to cross in, like within 2 weeks, to cross into Libra, right? There's this square to Gemini, and that's Venus, right? So this is your love, beauty, art, attraction, abundance. This is also, again, your relationships, right? So this talks about the habits maybe that you have explored. Again, in June, maybe you are deciding to get into some sort of commitment or have a child, or, whatever this is with the partner within love. And then in comes, this square activity at the later part of July. And now it challenges your daily routines. It challenges the routines that you probably have already established if you are working towards diligence within your behaviors of exploration and discovery. So with that, right, it's not necessarily anything that requires you to scrap or move on, right, unless you are just absolutely not practicing the diligence and systematic behaviors. If you are, on your P's and Q's in this moment, you may feel a trigger to yourself to kind of pivot, right? You might need to pivot and adjust your behaviors to kind of allow for the energy to continue to move smoothly. Now, we typically are not supposed to do the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again, right? That's just life in general, right? It requires us to be flexible, right? Life requires us to be curious, right? So this is where we get to practice. Okay, I've been doing the same thing over and over and over again, and maybe now it doesn't work anymore. Maybe now it is not as efficient, or does not support my forward movement. So how do I adjust in this moment so that I can continue to move forward? That is what you are going to be faced with as Mars goes through Virgo and it hits this square in Venus in your sixth house. And this again could be around relationships for you. This could be, a change in your habits within your new relationship. It really depends, on the different person, right? But overall, for you, Capricorn, there needs to be a concentration here on your behaviors around exploration and discovery. All right. That could be a second life partner, again, higher education, traveling, law, religion, spirituality, your ideology, and your worldview. All right. So this is consistent behaviors within that realm. If you concentrate on making your behavior consistent and going towards your highest and greatest good, you should be good to go, Capricorn. Okay. I hope this message reaches you well.